Corgis are one of the most recognizable dogs in the world. The short legs, the giant ears, the permanent expression that somehow manages to look both adorable and judgmental at the same time. Most people see a Corgi and think, cute. Corgi owners usually have a different word. Bossy. Because despite being relatively small dogs, Corgis often carry themselves with the confidence of animals that are significantly larger, much larger. In fact, one of the funniest things about the breed is how completely convinced they seem to be that they're in charge of everything. The house, the family, the schedule, the neighborhood, possibly the entire planet. And honestly, nobody seems to have informed them otherwise. So today we're talking about why Corgis think they're in charge, and why these tiny dogs somehow manage to act like middle management with 4 legs. Before we start, make sure to check out our selected and recommended products linked down below. 1. They act much bigger than they are. One of the first things people notice about Corgis is how much confidence they have. And honestly, it's kind of absurd, because physically, these dogs aren't very large, but nobody seems to have told the Corgi that. The Corgi walks into a room with the confidence of a dog 3 times its size, maybe 4. Sometimes it feels like the Corgi genuinely believes it's the largest animal present, regardless of what reality has to say about the situation. Owners know exactly what this looks like. A large dog appears. The Corgi is unimpressed. A stranger arrives. The Corgi has questions. Something unusual happens. The Corgi immediately assumes leadership responsibilities, and what's funny is that they rarely seem intimidated by much. Many dogs naturally adjust their behavior around larger animals. Corgis often skip that step entirely, not because they're reckless, because they're confident, almost unbelievably confident. Historically, this actually makes a lot of sense. Corgis were bred to move cattle, which sounds ridiculous when you first hear it. A dog with tiny legs helping control animals that weigh well over 1,000 pounds. But that's exactly what they did. And a job like that requires courage, determination, and a complete refusal to be intimidated by size. Modern Corgis still carry that attitude. The cattle might be gone. The confidence definitely isn't. What's especially funny is how naturally leadership seems to come to them. A lot of breeds wait for instructions. Corgis often act like they're the ones giving them. The dog isn't asking what's happening. The dog is supervising what's happening. And because they carry themselves with so much certainty, people often find themselves treating them differently. Almost like the dog actually is in charge, which, unfortunately, only encourages the behavior. The result is a breed that somehow manages to look adorable and authoritative at the exact same time. A combination that probably shouldn't work, and yet somehow works perfectly. 2. Everybody must follow the rules. One thing Corgis seem to have in common is a deep belief that rules are important, very important. The only catch is that they're usually the ones making them. And honestly, that's where a lot of the breed's bossy reputation comes from. A Corgi doesn't just live in a household. A Corgi manages a household, at least from the dog's perspective. Owners know exactly what this looks like. Somebody is late for dinner. The Corgi notices. Somebody changes the usual routine. The Corgi notices. Somebody sits in a spot that clearly belongs to the dog despite being purchased by a human. The Corgi definitely notices. And once the violation has been identified, the Corgi often feels obligated to address it immediately. What's funny is how seriously they take these responsibilities. A Labrador sees a change in routine and shrugs. A Corgi sees a change in routine and starts preparing a report. Because these dogs genuinely seem to like structure, they learn schedules quickly. They learn habits quickly. And once they understand how things are supposed to work, they become surprisingly invested in maintaining order. Sometimes more invested than the humans involved. This is one reason Corgis are often described as bossy. Not because they're trying to dominate the world, they're just convinced somebody needs to keep things organized. And after observing the humans for a while, the Corgi often concludes that somebody should probably be them. What's especially funny is that they don't seem to care whether anybody agrees. The dog has identified a problem. The dog has a solution. The dog is now issuing recommendations, maybe through barking, maybe through staring, maybe through following somebody around until the situation has been corrected. Whatever method gets results. And honestly, it's hard not to laugh at, because all of this confidence is coming from a dog whose legs are approximately 6 inches long. Yet somehow the Corgi carries itself like the CEO of the household. The schedule matters. The rules matter. The routine matters, and if anybody forgets that, the Corgi will be happy to remind them. Repeatedly. 3. They always need to know what's happening. One thing Corgis absolutely hate is being left out of the loop, because if something is happening anywhere within 100 feet, the Corgi believes it deserves a briefing. Immediately. These dogs are incredibly curious. Not Beagle-level investigative journalist curious, but definitely management-level curious. The kind of curious that wants updates, status reports, and explanations for unusual activity. Owners know exactly how this works. You stand up from the couch. The Corgi notices. You walk toward another room. The Corgi notices. You open a door that isn't usually open. The Corgi is suddenly conducting a formal investigation. And honestly, it's hard not to laugh. Because many Corgis act like they're personally responsible for monitoring household operations. The dog isn't being nosy. The dog is gathering important information. At least, that's the story it's telling itself. What's funny is how quickly they respond to change. A new visitor arrives. The Corgi appears. A package gets delivered. The Corgi appears. Somebody starts cooking in the kitchen. The Corgi appears. It's almost like they have an internal alert system. Something interesting happens and the dog immediately reports for duty. This is partly because Corgis are intelligent dogs. They learn routines quickly. They notice patterns. And once they understand how a household normally operates, unusual events stand out immediately. Most people see a small change. The Corgi sees a developing situation, and because they naturally like being involved, they're not content to simply ignore it. They want information. They want updates. They want visibility into the project. What's especially funny is that many Corgis seem convinced they're helping. The dog follows somebody around the house. The dog watches everything they're doing. The dog supervises every task. And somehow the Corgi believes it's contributing to productivity, which, to be fair, is exactly how some managers operate too. The result is a breed that's constantly aware of what's happening around them. Not because they're anxious, not because they're paranoid, because they're convinced that being informed is part of being in charge. And as far as the Corgi is concerned, being in charge is simply how life works. Don't forget to check out our selected and recommended products. They might just be the perfect tools to make your life easier when it comes to caring for your pawed friend. 4. The herding instinct never left. One reason Corgis act like tiny managers is because, historically, management was actually part of the job. These dogs were originally bred to herd cattle, which sounds completely ridiculous when you remember how short their legs are. But somehow it worked. Very well. Corgis would move animals that were vastly larger than themselves by being fearless, persistent, and occasionally annoying enough that the cattle decided cooperation was the easier option. And honestly, modern Corgis haven't forgotten any of that. The cows disappeared. The management mindset stayed. Owners see this all the time. The Corgi doesn't just observe people. The Corgi organizes people. Family members moving in different directions, suspicious, children running around. Needs supervision. other pets doing something unexpected. Immediate intervention may be required. What's funny is that many corgis seem genuinely concerned when everyone isn't together. The dog notices separation, the dog notices movement, and sometimes the dog starts trying to influence where everybody goes. Not because it's being controlling, because somewhere deep inside that little brain, a tiny herding dog is still on duty. And honestly, that's where some of their bossiest behavior comes from. A lot of breeds see activity. Corgis see logistics. The family isn't simply walking around. The family is moving resources. The dog isn't simply following people. The dog is monitoring operations. What's especially funny is how natural all of this seems to them. Nobody trains a corgi to supervise. The corgi arrives pre-installed with the software. The dog just assumes that keeping track of everybody is part of its responsibilities, and because they're intelligent enough to notice patterns, they often become surprisingly good at it. The corgi knows who usually leaves first, who normally arrives home, who follows the schedule, and who keeps creating unnecessary complications, which means the dog is often paying far more attention than anyone realizes. The result is a breed that never fully stopped herding. The targets simply changed. Instead of cattle, they're now managing family members. And honestly, the corgi seems perfectly happy with that promotion. 5. They have very strong opinions. One thing corgis never seem to lack is opinions, and honestly, they have a lot of them. Opinions about visitors, opinions about food, opinions about schedules, opinions about whether your current decision-making process meets acceptable standards. And if the answer is no, the corgi is usually prepared to let you know immediately. This is one reason the breed develops a reputation for being bossy. Because corgis don't always keep their thoughts to themselves, a lot of dogs simply react to situations. Corgis often provide commentary, sometimes extensive commentary. Owners know exactly what this looks like. The dog wants dinner. The dog has an opinion. The dog wants a walk. The dog has an opinion. The dog disagrees with something you're doing. The dog definitely has an opinion, and somehow those opinions always seem incredibly urgent. What's funny is how confident they are about it. The average corgi behaves as though its position is completely reasonable, not up for debate, not open to discussion, simply correct. The human is welcome to catch up whenever they're ready. And honestly, that's part of what makes the breed so entertaining, because the confidence often feels wildly disproportionate to the situation. You move a blanket. The corgi objects. You sit in a different chair. The corgi requires clarification. You alter a routine that has existed for 3 consecutive days. The corgi begins drafting formal complaints. What's especially interesting is that many corgis are genuinely intelligent enough to notice when things change. They're observant. They learn patterns. They remember routines, which means they often know exactly when something isn't happening the way it normally does. And when they notice, they tend to express themselves enthusiastically. The result is a breed that often feels less like a pet and more like a tiny coworker who's been promoted far beyond their qualifications. A coworker who attends every meeting, offers unsolicited feedback, and somehow remains completely convinced they're helping, which honestly might be the most corgi thing imaginable. 6. Why people love their tiny dictator energy. After everything we've talked about, the confidence, the supervision, the rule enforcement, and the endless opinions, you'd think corgis would be exhausting. And honestly, sometimes they are. But corgi owners absolutely adore them anyway, because all of those traits come packaged inside one of the most entertaining personalities in the dog world. These dogs are funny. Not because they're trying to be funny, because they take themselves so seriously. The corgi genuinely believes its responsibilities matter. The corgi genuinely believes household operations require oversight. The corgi genuinely believes somebody needs to maintain standards around here. And somehow that level of confidence becomes incredibly charming. What's especially funny is that underneath all the bossiness, most corgis are affectionate, playful, and deeply attached to their families. They want involvement because they care. They want information because they're curious. They want control because they believe they're helping. The intentions are usually good. The execution is occasionally ridiculous. And that's exactly why people fall in love with the breed. Living with a corgi is rarely boring. There's always a new opinion, a new investigation, a new management initiative that nobody approved. The dog constantly finds ways to become part of the story. And because they're intelligent, observant, and full of personality, those stories tend to be memorable. Owners don't just remember having a corgi. They remember the tiny supervisor that monitored every household decision for years. The tiny manager that somehow became convinced it was running the entire operation. And honestly, after a while, most owners stop arguing. They simply accept that the corgi has promoted itself. Again. So why do corgis think they're in charge? Because for generations they were bred to be confident, observant, and willing to take initiative. The cattle may be gone, but the attitude remains. Modern corgis still want to know what's happening, still want to stay involved, and still seem convinced that somebody needs to keep everything organized, preferably them. They're intelligent, confident, curious, and completely unbothered by the fact that they're much smaller than the responsibilities they've assigned themselves, which is exactly why so many people love them. Because behind the adorable face, the short legs, and the fluffy appearance is a dog that's absolutely certain it belongs in charge. And honestly, after spending enough time around a corgi, you might start believing it too. Don't forget to check out our selected and recommended products. They might just be the perfect tools to make your life easier when it comes to caring for your pawed friend.